Okay, well, it's been an interesting year and a bit, and a good year and a bit on balance. So Europa in its present form is probably about a year and a quarter old. And what we've done at Europa is take a company, focus on the Iberian Peninsula, which we are very, very happy about. We like the political risk spectrum. We like the fact that there's established rule of mining law, that our region of Spain is a mining province, if you like, Castilla and Leon. And we think that on the board that the traditional places where perhaps we've gone to in the past for mining in the last 20 years aren't quite as comfortable as they have been before. And I take parts of Africa and parts of South America. We like the idea of developing a project, and our main project is a lead, zinc and silver project in Spain due to the political risk profile and because we can deliver an available source of physical metal, we think probably within about 4 to 5 years. And we think for groups interested in having that physical metal in the near term, which is genuinely economically robust, which has a real chance of continuing under the rule of law, is quite exciting. Today we've got a new header. It's no longer just lead, zinc and silver in Spain, it's beginning development. We announced our scoping study today. We are very pleased with that scoping study. We have an issue. We are ASX listed and we've had to strip most of the numbers from the scoping study, in fact pretty all of them, to stay with ASX compliance. What I'm going to do tonight is talk you through about what excites us about the scoping study and about the Toral lead, zinc and silver project. This is the beginning of a real ramp up towards getting into production, to delivering this into feasibility study. So let's just go through. The point about Europa and Toral is that you're standing on the shoulders of giants. This was a project, the Toral project, where the data was passed around, the Excel spreadsheets, the 43101, it was passed from one company to the next company to the next company. What nobody did, I have to say, until myself and Mr. Miles Campion, who's sitting right at the back with his hand up, so one of the questions we asked is, where is all the core? Where is all the primary data? But it turned out it was sitting in a huge core library in the south of Spain. And when we went down there, we checked the records, nobody had actually visited the primary core for, I think, about 20 years. So this core was the majority, the high-grade centres, the really important infrastructures of this historic drilling which had happened from company to company of about 41,000 metres. And when we started going back into this high-grade core and looking at it and reassaying it and saying, do you know what, we're just going to stop doing anything like more drilling, we're going to stop doing anything which is expensive, we're not going to drill for drilling's sake, we're going to do intelligent, focused work. And we discovered things like that. That's silver. So the silver resource that you see today in our JORC 2012 resource is very much ours. It was sitting there in the core, but it hadn't made its way up through the chain of evidence to any of the previous reports. We also found things like this, and that's when we're looking at the zinc resource and we're thinking, well, the specific gravity readings on that don't look right to us, but we have to include them within the resource, which we redid without any drilling. But then when we've re-examined and retested the core, going back to first principles, we've discovered that sure enough the SG readings were wrong, which gave us an uptick in resource. So what we've been trying to do is intelligent focus work to create a robust economic model, okay? And in a sense, the tons we have and the grade we have are interesting, but what we want is a genuinely deliverable mine which can go into production, sustain itself over a serious period of time and mine money, not just rock. But we like being in Spain. We like the local infrastructure. We love seeing companies in Spain and also Portugal, I think W is presenting later, really achieving things within the Iberian Peninsula. This is an exciting place to be in at the moment. We're also very pleased our first drilling campaign, which was an RC step-out campaign, extended the boundary of the known resource, well, that extended out from the resource 200 metres, intersecting mineralisation, including one high-grade hit, about 200 metres, but also testing the continuity of the mineralisation. So now that we know that in addition to this very focused resource that sits in the middle from historic drilling for the reinterpretation that we've done, that the prospectivity just continues to the east. We pretty much thought it would do because there's a mine immediately to the west of us, so you would have thought that would be the case. But targeting underground mining operations around a high-grade core, that's what we're really talking about in the scoping study today. So again, this is in the core set, so that's Mr. Campion there in the foreground, and this is our team working through this fantastic core library, just trying to suck every last ounce of data that we can out of the existing rock before we go spending any more of shareholders' money. The maiden JORC resource that you saw in the beginning of this year was all built along this painstaking set of data analysis that was put together. Again, on the right-hand side, you can find this on our website. Here is a list of all the drilling that has happened before us. Let's just have a quick step through this year. So, maiden JORC resource out at the beginning of the year, very happy with that. RC step-out campaign we've talked about. Stoping study completed. We said it would be in Q4 of this year, and we've put it out. We did think it was going to be earlier, but in actual fact, we put out a resource upgrade, so therefore it did end up being today. And we've just completed our first diamond drilling campaign, which is extremely exciting. It's just a handful of drill holes, about 3, and they've been sent to assay. And we're looking forward to the results that we're going to get back, hopefully within December. So that's our new resource. So let's look at this. 60 million tonnes at 7% equivalent, zinc equivalent. Now, that's interesting. You know, you can mine off that, but it's very much on the edge at 7% of probably what you can mine at. And we want something which frankly has better margins for that. So what the scoping study looked at, and what we're going to be looking at now, is interrogating the high-grade core of this asset. One of the biggest challenges we've had is internally, and it's been trying to get people's brains out of get away from near surface thinking. You're not going to be able to drill it near surface, and have a look at what you can actually mine profitably. This isn't open pit. This isn't let's mine the entire mountain. This is underground, highly focused. Let's see what the high-grade core can deliver over a sensible mine life. So possibly some of the things that we talk about internally is, okay, yeah, there's 60 million tonnes at 70%. 7%, 17%, 7%. But what about 10 million tonnes as a higher grade? So again, you're actually mining money. You're actually extracting cash out of the ground near term and with good sustainable margins. I'm not going to talk about the zinc price today. The zinc price is somewhat schizophrenic. You know, it was great seeing the zinc price go up at the beginning of this year and the end of last year. We think the zinc price will go up again next year. That's not really the point. Don't buy this stock if you think the zinc is going to be at the levels that it was at the beginning of this year, because that would be foolish. What we're trying to do is have a look at sustainable zinc price with the silver credit and the lead, and actually have something where we can develop it into production, or if somebody comes along and says we want to develop it into production, that it's really going to be a mine. Not just for next week, not just on a scoping study, not just on a piece of paper. This is our new exploration license. Now, this has been a shock to us. I'm going to be frank with you. In the closing moments of the scoping study, we came up with an anomaly. Miles identified it. We went back to our geological team, and we went all the way back through the, if I call it the chain of evidence, and we discovered that there was a coordinate shift. Now, we've lost some resource because of it. Now, it's resource that sits within our domain of influence. It's resource that we can get back when we apply to a mining license. It's resource that, frankly, we probably aren't going to mine anyway because it's too shallow. But that type of thing is terrifying. That type of thing, if I was a shareholder, frankly, I'd be wondering, what are they doing? It was a basic error. All I can say to you is we've been back through every single bit of paper while we're still doing this at the moment. And I think we've been lucky, to be honest, just to lose that area there, which is relatively unimportant. But that's something we've announced in our scoping study today. So I just thought I'd like to head that off. But the nice thing is that over here, sorry, there's no pointer on this thing, the step out drilling, the license extends down to the east. That's where we conducted the RC drilling, which interpreted further mineralization. So, Tyrrell scoping study, here's a motley crew of various people some of you may know. That's Mr. Colin Bird, our chairman. There's Miles, and here's the sum of the team of specialist metallurgists, mining engineers, and geologists. This scoping study is a big scoping study. When we were going through our discussions with the ASX, they did remark laughingly they'd never seen something as detailed as this. There is a lot of detail in that. That is partly a product of, I think, who the company is. We have a lot of people who have actually successfully built mines, who've discovered mines, and with a highly competent team. The plus side is we now have something which we can go out to groups, not into the public market, I will admit, but which is highly credible, which has worked examples of what this project's going to be, what this mine's going to be as we target the next stage of this company, which is feasibility study. Let's just have a look at the area. We like Castilla-León. We like it because that's us, Tyrrell. That's the Antonina mine. That's 2 kilometers away. That's an active tailings dam on top of a historic tailings dam from Antonina, and that's an active quarry. So right there on our doorstep, you have operating extractive operations with licensed tailings dams. And that's the sort of thing which, if you actually want to develop projects in the next 5 years, is really quite exciting. We like this area. The Junta of Castilla-León is hugely supportive of what they do. They give us good advice, they're engaged, they're positive, and this is an established lead, zinc and coal mining area. So the Antonina mine mined lead, zinc for a significant period of time, and a lot of that data was used in the scoping study to look at metallurgy. Metallurgy we're very happy with. There's a lot of mining in the area. There was the old Tech mine, Rubiales, which is about 25k away. We like the data we're seeing, but one of the key things for this project next year is going to be testing that metallurgy and seeing what products we can come. For me, that's one of the key value drivers of this project. Here's the scoping study. I'm not going to read it out, but it's fundamentally simple. Cut and fill, reducing the tailings areas that we need. It's a very basic system. We have full schematics. I'm not going to go through them because what I want to talk about is, here you can see the decline into the high grade area. You can see the plant site. There's the cut down resource there, just to give you an idea of the plant. This is interesting. So, mineable area. No, we're not going to mine all the way down in a ridiculously waste of money type. We're going to have a look at these high grade mining areas, and that's going to be our focus in 2019. Currently, resources all inferred. We want to move it into indicated, targeting these high grade areas, and number 2, we want to take samples from that core and do the metallurgical testing. These will be the core drivers of that. Once we unlock 60% of resource into indicated, we can also report further numbers into the market. But again, it's simple. It's looking at what's actually cost effective. It's looking at these upper areas here and seeing what gets most money back to the owner of this down into selective high-grade cut and fill mining areas. Focused, tight and simple. So next year, probably do a stage drilling campaign at some point. We've still got a lot more work to do. So we've got the drilling results back from the diamond drill campaign that we've just completed. We should have those back by December. We're going to be quite interesting to see what they come out with. We were surprised by the RC step out results. We were surprised by one anomaly of silver, for instance, that was contained within that. So we're going to be interesting to see what the diamond drilling comes back with. We want to start our environmental baseline study almost immediately in January, so we can get that 12-month study running, so we fulfill that towards the feasibility study. Land use permissions we've talked about before. You can find a full schematic of what we need to go through and the process that we've been undertaking pretty early, actually, in terms of that. And Yeah, I think look at the metallurgy. That would be interesting. We're also doing a mapping program because we discovered that we don't really like, well, we're redoing our own mapping of the surface work as well. So we're going to be announcing that. But what we're doing is a very focused project in an area with a massive amount of infrastructure, with a great rule of law in a highly attractive political risk region. Yes, we don't like the resource downgrade because of how we discovered it. And number two, the restrictions on reporting the scoping study are difficult. However, we are firmly of the opinion that we need to move this project forward rapidly next year, giving the results of that scoping study, because it's hugely exciting.
Lawrence, thank you. Do we have any questions at all?
Hi, Lawrence. I met you and Miles at the investor event in April, and I was very impressed with the company. What you've got here tonight is actually a loyal, committed W Resources fan club, long-term investors who've been waiting and hoping for a good return on our investment. Why would we invest in you now rather than waiting for you to actually get to the stage where you've got a confirmed JORC and a mine development program?
Well, I'd say we probably have both of those. So we have inferred JORC, which you can see, and you also know that we have a scoping study, which, while it doesn't have the top line economic forecasts, is highly detailed. So from the get-go, you look at our share price, and then you say 60 million tons at 7% lead, zinc, and silver. You look at the amount of work that we've done over the last year and the amount of money that we spent on it to get to that stage, which I think is highly cost effective. And the last thing is you look at this highly focused mine plan that if you go through the stages of it and the process of it, you might think, well, this is very focused into the high grade area. It's got this lovely core. It's open at depth completely. But these guys don't need to do any crazy extending the drilling. They don't need to do any of that. What they can do is they can focus very cost effectively, potentially, on this middle area. Call it 7 million tons, call it 10 million tons at a much higher grade. So you're hitting the parameters one after the other very early with a share price, which is what it is. I hate share prices. CEOs who say their share price is undervalued. Obviously it is. And you compare all that to our share price and all the work that we've done compared to the amount of money that you've spent on it, you'd probably think, well, with a drill program that's going to turn 41,000 meters of inferred into indicated, plus you've got the metallurgical work, which is the key thing, frankly, for lead zinc. You're going to see what that comes up with. I'd say, yeah, that's why you'd invest now. Because if you wait until there's a feasibility study, etc., most of the exciting work's already done.
I suppose market cap wise as well, market cap isn't huge at the moment at all, is it? I mean, it's very low. So.
Well, we look at other projects. I mean, SARS is a case in point. Yes, it's an operating mine, but it's very similar to us in size and grade. And Fusion sold that to essentially to 400, let's say, $1 million. That was operating, but I'll take a massive discount on that price.
Have any other questions at all?
Hi, Lawrence. You've obviously got a lot on your plate for 2019. What is the cash position at the minute, and when are you expecting to raise more funds?
We're an exploration company, so we are going to have to raise funds at some point. What I will say to you is that we've been under budget every single month that we've been running this, and we've allowed ourselves fat. We've still got a lot of work to do at the moment, so getting those drill results out, feeding those back into the model. And also, it's boring and not necessarily announceable, but the mapping, having a look back in our own core, feeding in continually what the RC and the diamonds telling us is work we're continuing. And also, we're quite happy to flip the switch on doing the environmental baseline study in January when we get on with that other work. At some point, yeah, we want to start doing that infill work down into the high grade earlier and doing the MET but I think to date we've proved that we've been really quite successful, spending not a lot of cash and hitting our time deadlines. No, I'm not going to go into that next year.
Yeah, great presentation. Good ideas. I mean, I think everybody will agree that that the first principles are sort out what you've got, which is great from a company ethic point of view. You seem to have a view which is probably again very good in modern thinking of 20% of the effort to get 80% of the resources. In other words, focus on the winners in your mining. But the problem I think you have is that the mining industry is very institutionalized, shall we say. It gets run by the JORC and the provable resource and the rest of it. And you need to spend resources in developing that to get the finance which you obviously need. But as a strategy of actually getting a commercial mine together, it's a very good modern thinking. But one thing you didn't quite fully cover for me was how you're getting your results and the information you have into a computerized 3D model to try and test and prove as you go forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of proven processes to do that. So very quickly, what happens is, I mean, that it is a good question, because this is one of the things that we were banging our head against a wall probably about September last year, is that none of the data was really properly computerized. So the honest answer is you bring in expert JORC consultants, as we did as a first step, and it's about intellectual capital. It's working with the existing good people and unlocking the enormous amount of data and information and knowledge that they have historically in the mine. But it's putting that together with modern exploration techniques and modern processing techniques. And that's why I talked a bit about the shift in the thinking. It was Miles motivating some of the exploration team to get out of one mode of thinking and as simple as stop writing it on bits of paper. But it's just attritional, sticking it all into a database and checking it and getting independent people to check it. So in summer of this year, August, there was a group of people just banging away, relogging all of the core that we thought was interesting. It's not exciting, it's not pretty, it's not a resource, but literally going through it, that's the building blocks by how you get to actually improve the resource and doing what I like to think is intelligent, constructive work. Yeah, I can go through I'll get Miles to go through the process in a much better way afterwards, if you like. We can go through stage by stage how it happens.
You're staying around for a bit.
Staying around for a bit. Absolutely.
One more question? Any questions at all?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I had a look at your accounts last night, and I noticed that you have a administration expenditure of £1 million versus an exploration spend of 400,000 last year. So it does seem your administration costs are somewhat top heavy. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Absolutely.
And also, can I also say why you listed on 3 exchanges? Is that necessary?
To sum all of that up, it's legacy. So in September, one of the things that we did is the board changed significantly. We changed the admin function, we changed the finance function, we changed the company secretary, all based in Australia. And if you go back, you can see this is RNS. I've talked about it, is we slashed costs considerably. The costs in this company at Topco were extraordinary. And that before we spent 3 months doing stuff like that and trying to set licenses in place before we got anywhere near actually doing some proper work, because all of that had to go. The lawyers' fees alone were extraordinary. I won't go into too much detail about that because it's probably not appropriate in a public forum, but I agree with you. all of those costs had to go, and we slashed and burned. If you go back to announcements, probably about December of last year, you'll see I've outlined an awful lot of that. 3 exchanges. Initially, it was an ASX company about 11, 12 years ago. It brought in iron ore assets in South Africa, listed on the United Kingdom. That's where most of the money, nearly all the money, has been raised through the UK, probably for the past 10 years. The JSE listing as a product of listing on the JSE for reasons involving BEE with the legacy South African assets. So it was a mechanism for getting the partner in. It is something we look at repeatedly and we discuss an awful lot at the moment. If I could get rid of the JSE has served its purpose, but at the moment, the amount of money it would spend for me to terminate that is not justifiable. So it's a tiny amount of money to keep it going. At this point, I don't think shareholders want me spending £100,000 on delisting, approximately. The ASX and the UK, the AIM exchange, that is an interesting discussion. There's pros and cons of, for instance, keeping the ASX. But for the time being, we are going to keep the door open, but we are having discussions. But there's no doubt that the UK and Turner Pope, frankly, have supported us fantastically over basically putting this company on a new standing. And it's been from the UK and through the Turner Pope shareholders.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lawrence Reed, Europa Metals.